All right, guys. This happens a lot in statistics. It turns out for the last couple weeks, I have been lying to you. That happens a lot. So, I've actually been telling you two lies. The first lie is that we develop our alternative hypothesis after we do the sample. That's not true. So, we should not, well, but in the past, we have always developed our alternative hypothesis using a greater than or a less than, right? How did we know it was greater than or less than? We looked at the sample, and the sample would tell us which way to draw the inequality. Okay, so there are two lies in there. One is you cannot, or rather you should not, develop your null hypothesis before you do the sample. The other lie I told you is every sample is greater than or less than. That's not true. In fact, most samples are probably not greater than or less than. So why does that matter? Well, let's say I wanted to know the average height of females in Utah over the age of 18. Okay? And somebody tells me that they think that the average height is 50, no, that's small, 65 inches. Okay? I have to set up my null hypothesis right now. Okay? So what would my null hypothesis be? Well, my null hypothesis is that pi is equal to 65. That's easy. But what is my alternative hypothesis? I don't know. What? It's not equal to. Do I have any reason to assume, some of you aren't paying attention, do I have any reason to assume that my sample is going to be less than 65? No. Do I have any reason to assume that the sample is going to be bigger than 65? No. I have no reason to assume that's the case. So, my alternative hypothesis is just going to be pi is not equal to 65. Okay? Now you might say that doesn't matter. It does. It makes a huge difference. Okay? Because I am going to test my p-value against 5%. Right? Well, if I have a one-tailed test and I draw 5% on one side, man, why are we so chatty today? I am the most important thing in your lives at this moment. So that is a one-tailed test. But what if I draw a two-tailed test and I keep my p at 5%? So that's going to look like this. So if you land in that shaded region, you reject the null. Is it easier or harder to reject the null in a two-tailed test than versus a one-tailed test? Is it easier to land in the red shaded areas or the blue shaded area? It's easier to land in the blue. Most tests are probably two-tailed tests. They're a little bit more complicated, which is why we don't start with them. They don't make as much sense to begin with. And it is harder to reject the null hypothesis in a two-tailed test because the z-score is bigger. In a one-tailed test, you only have to go out to about z equals 1.6. Or, sorry, I messed that up. So the distance from here to here is about z equals 1.6. So if you get a z-score bigger than 1.6 in a one-tailed test, you're going to reject the null. But in a two-tailed test, z is about 2. So we need to figure out before we get started, is this a one-tailed test or is it a two-tailed test? And it comes down to one idea. Are you testing to see if the assumed value, if your value is different than the assumed value, or do you have some reason to assume that it's going to be greater than or less than? If there is something about the problem that makes it sound like it's going to be less than, then go ahead and do a one-tailed test. Okay? For instance, you're worried that people are becoming shorter. Is that going to be a one-tailed test or a two-tailed test? One-tailed. Because you are worried that it's going to be less than. Okay? If the state average on the composite ACT is a 22, and you want to know if your school is any different, would that be a one-tailed test or a two-tailed test? That's a two-tailed test. So I have 20 examples of one and two-tailed tests on 2.4b. So I just want you to go through individually. Don't talk to anybody about it. Just go through it individually. Some of them are tricky. Some of them I made hard on purpose. Just go through and say, is this a one-tailed or a two-tailed? I'll give you a couple minutes. All right. Number 1. Is there a difference in the average height of basketball players and soccer players? Two-tailed tests. We're not assuming that one is taller than the other. Now, there's probably a good chance that the basketball players are taller, but that is not inherent in the question. It just says, is there a difference? That would be a two-tailed test. 2, is the average number of hours of sleep people get on weekends more or less than on weekdays than weekends? 2, why? It says more or less. So it could be bigger or smaller. That one's a two-tail. That was a tricky one. Number 3, is there a difference in the average blood pressure of people who live in the city and people who live in the countryside? That would be two-tailed. What do you think? Do you think that the country folk have different blood pressure than the city folk? Probably. It's probably. Now, is it going to be higher or lower? I don't know. But are country folk categorically different than city folk? Yes. In diet, in exercise. So there's probably a difference. I don't know if it's going to be higher or lower. People in the country tend to not eat too well, but at the same time, we're probably less stressed. So, 4, a new investment strategy is predicted to outperform the market. Is there evidence to support this claim? One-tailed. We're assuming that it's better. 5, is a new drug likely to increase blood pressure? One-tailed. 6, is the average salary of men more than that of women in a particular profession? One-tailed. Do dog and cat owners have the same average age? Two-tailed. 6 was one-tailed. Or sorry, two-tailed. No, 6 is one-tailed. I'm not going to listen to you guys anymore. Number 8. Does a new teaching method decrease test scores? One-tailed. We're assuming less than. 9. Do people who exercise regularly have lower cholesterol than those who don't? One-tailed. Is there a difference in learning between students who use a new teaching method and those who use the traditional method? 2. That should probably say subject to new teaching method. But yes, that is a two-tailed. 11. Is the average salary of engineers higher than the average salary of teachers? One-tailed. 12. Is there a difference in the average number of hours people spend watching TV and playing video games? Two-tailed. Okay, 13. Is there a difference in the average IQ scores of people who are right-handed and people who are left-handed? Two-tailed. 14. Is there a difference in the average number of hours students study for exams and the average number of hours they spend socializing? Two-tailed. 15. A new training program is expected to improve employee productivity. Is there a significant difference in productivity between employees who have completed the program and those who have not? 1. Why? It is expected to increase. So we actually get that from the first sentence and not the second. If all you do is read the second sentence, it looks like a two-tail. But the first sentence tells us it's one-tailed. Whoa, is 16 a repeat? Oh. Do people spend the same amount of time playing video games as they do watching TV? Two-tailed. 17. It is pretty much. Okay, can I be honest here? This is my first time ever in teaching. I used AI to generate a list. But I had to go through and edit like 12 of the 20, so I don't know that it was worth my time. 17. A new teaching method is implemented. Is there a significant difference in test scores between students using the new method and those using the old method? It's 2. Is there any reason to assume the scores are going to go up? That's true. That's true. But have they shown anything to suggest that it should be? And I mean, this is a great question. Obviously, the people want it to be greater, right? But is there any reason for us to think that it is? No. Yeah. Do people implement new teaching methods that are actually worse? All the time. It happens all the time. Okay, 18. A new product is designed to reduce weight. Does the data show a significant weight loss for those using the product? One-tailed. A new medication is believed to increase survival rates for a particular disease. Does the data support this hypothesis? One-tailed, right? And 20. Is there a difference in the average number of hours people spend commuting to work and the average number of hours people spend commuting home? Two-tailed. Good job. Okay, so let's do a two-tailed test. Okay, so nearly everything is the same with a two-tailed test. The only difference is you are now shading both sides instead of just one. So your 5% is split between the right side and the left side. Okay, that's a two-tail. It is claimed that in a particular area, 20% of all high schoolers drank alcohol at least once in the last year. Is this one-tailed or two-tailed? So are we assuming that our sample is going to be greater than this or less than this? Neither. Is it going to be different? So this is a two-tailed test. So what is the null hypothesis? H naught says that pi is equal to 0.2. What is the alternative? HA says that pi is not equal to 0.2. So we take an anonymous survey of 85 high school students. Why does it need to be anonymous? Do you think kids are going to be honest if it's not anonymous? So Mike Grange comes over and starts asking you, Allison, have you drank alcohol in the last year? I don't say no. Yeah, everybody's going to say no, right? Okay.
Yeah, why'd you do that?
So our sample size is 85 and our sample value is 22%. So let's go over here. Our probability of success is 0.2. Okay. Our sample size is 85, and we'll do 100 or 1,000 simulations. Okay. Am I going to do greater than or less than? Not equal to. Good. So not, oh, just equal to. And then I'm going to put in 0.22. Okay. Okay. But I need to do a two-tailed test. I think I need to put greater than. Why is that giving me 58%? Oh, I see. Sorry. All right. So what is my p-value? My p-value is 58%. Why is it 58%? Because I'm shading both the right side and the left side. And when I shade both sides, I get 58%. So do I accept the null hypothesis or reject it? .58 is my p-value. So I'm going to accept the null hypothesis. Does it appear that our area is different than the stated value? No. 22 is different than 20, but it's not far enough away from 20 for us to reject the null. Okay, so the next question asks, if this were a one-tailed test instead of a two-tailed, would the results change? So I'm going to go here, nope, here, and I'm going to switch to a one-tailed test. Now I get a different p-value, but is 34 enough to reject the null? No, we would need to be less than 5. So in this case, it didn't matter. If you would have done a one-tailed test and a two-tailed test, it wouldn't matter. We get the same answer. But the p-values are drastically different. One was 58 and the other was 34. Okay, so you need to do all 4 sections on the back. And I will give you the rest of class to do this. You need to come to class tomorrow ready to answer these. All right, I'll end the video. Spend the rest of the class working on it. If you don't get it done, finish it at home. And then we'll go through this in class tomorrow.